This episode of UDSP is brought to you by Shutterstock.com. For 25% off your new account, head on over to Shutterstock.com and use the offer code Gamebreaker1113 at checkout.
Gamebreaker TV.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 27 of Unicorn Duck Shadow Puppets. Today is November 25th, 2013. I am Mike Schaffnet, and today, Spellslingers are just looking awesome. 20-man rating is mandatory, and open beta kind of has a date, sort of, maybe, for you guys who are looking forward to that. All that and more coming up, but first, from right here on UDSP, you guys know him, you guys love him, Mr. Farhan Siddiqui.
Hello, everyone. How are y'all doing out there?
Good, man. How are you?
Ready for some Spellslinger.
Yes, we'll get into that here shortly. Also joining us right here from UDSP and Guild Umbra, Mr. Mark Taylor.
What's going on? What's going on? Dominion in the house.
Alrighty. So let's just, you guys ready to talk some WildStar, or you just want to dance? Here, we're going to turn the music back up and we can dance, you know. All right, let's go ahead. Yeah, I know. Chat room's like, stop dancing.
Make him stop that.
We got.
I have children in the room
to talk about. Gosh,
my eyes.
So, so the Spellslinger was re-announced this week, and kind of got its own class page here, a live stream, and an Ask Me Anything. So, mobile and ranged with guns and magic. I mean, this class overall, I think it looks like a lot of fun for the ranged enthusiasts out there.
Yep.
What do you guys
think?
I mean, it says it all when you say guns and magic.
Is it right?
Right.
Everything a ranged DPS would ever want. I get to use gun and magic? Soul.
Yeah, exactly. It is a fun class. I mean, it's like they said. I mean, you're not stationary, which, you know, some people have issues with. You can run and gun, you can shoot, you can lay down a lot of DPS, and I think there's just something to the fact that you're running around with two pistols in a hand, you know, in any chain rather, running around. It's just that visceral feeling of fun, and then, you know, all the little magic or movement techniques just kind of add to that. Farhan?
Yeah, I agree totally. The increased mobility of the Spellslinger is sort of supposed to be their strong point. They're supposed to be the kind of class that is really slippery, even if you have light armor. So if they do catch you, then you're probably going to get hurt really, really badly pretty quickly. But they have a lot of tricks up their sleeves. They're sort of the slipperiest of all of them. And as we know, much better than that other light armor class that other one. Just
and
get
this
that
is
out of here.
Which is interesting, because it's not like their tricks to get out of trouble are really CCs traditionally, right?
Yeah, it's more like just being really slippery, a lot of ability to just move around, slip into the void, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit in a bit here, but just really cool, like, kind of ability to bring magic into the world of WildStar. And I know that was something that a lot of people were discussing on Reddit, like, sort of, why is it that, you know, does magic really fit in the world of WildStar to have someone that's legit doing magic? Like, if you look at some of the tooltips that they were mousing over in the live stream, it's like, you know, this does X number of magic damage straight up. So like that's like their dichotomy. They have like tech damage, they have physical damage, and then they have magic damage. And so there are, you know, actual magic in WildStar. So I think it's actually pretty cool that they went that way, that it's not just like, you know, super techy kind of thing, but they also have like the side of having magic in there. And yeah, Spellslinger seems pretty neat as far as that goes.
I mean, you're basically talking about how the Spellslinger sound like they're going to be extremely slippery, which obviously means it's probably going to be one of the best kiting classes, which is easily going to translate over to
the PvPs.
The PvP, and that, I mean, that's even what Carbine kind of came out and said. It's the premier kiting class, and I think that PvP players are going to love the idea of you can't hold me down, and I can shoot you from a distance.
Yeah, and definitely also just the fact that, you know, as a player who's really like feels like it's really satisfying when you actually land those kinds of skill shots in games like Dota and in a lot of games where it's actually like there's this aiming component in there, and with the long range attacks with the Childgrass and WildStar, I feel like Spellslinger's really like a class that'll shine a lot with having those skill shots that make you feel like, okay, you really landed those hits, as opposed to it just being sort of like, okay, I clicked on the target and then I pushed the button and it just like it's gonna hit as long as the dice roll goes off. So yeah, that's
because you could totally in this game you could totally miss. You could put one of your skill shots up, and if the mob moves out the way, you just missed. You know what I mean? And so that whole auto-targeting thing is just not there. The whole entire concept of I gotta line my shot up, it makes all the difference in the world when you're playing this game. At first, I'm not gonna lie, it can be a little off-putting because it is different. I mean, if you play Terra or Smite or games like that where you have to do some of this kind of combat, then you'll be more in tune for it. And folks, especially if you're looking at probably playing a warrior, I definitely suggest folks start playing Smite if you want to kind of get a good idea for free on how the combat is. It's not a perfect one, relationship, but it kind of is there. Or Terror is probably another good example of it. But it's all about positioning. It's all about maneuvering. It's all about I do have to line up my shots, because just because I have a gun and I'm going to shoot you does not mean that where I'm shooting is where you are at. It's not the whole I'm running this way and I hit tab target, I'm now shooting back that way no matter where I'm maneuvering my tune. That's just not there in this game.
What about the fact that it kind of seems to be, the resource system is something that obviously here some would say is kind of, it doesn't punish you as much. How is that going to play into a factor for this class?
I'm not 100% sure what our producer meant when he said it's unpunishing or whatever the word for that would be, but I think, because I honestly think that the Spellslinger's resource system, at least of what we've seen out of the 4 classes that we know about, we haven't had the re-reveal of the Stalker yet, but at least of those 4, I feel like the Spellslinger's resource is probably the most interesting, at least to me, just because, to get into what the resource is, so the Spellslinger mechanic is called Spell Power or Spell Surge, and basically every class has that innate ability, right? Like the ability that's on the far left part of the action bar, I guess left on this side, and whenever you push that button, then something happens. For the Warrior and the Esper, what we saw was a very potent damage cooldown, right? Or I guess for the tank part of Warrior, like a very potent tanking cooldown where you just took no damage, and the Esper is, of course, both, right? They're like taking no damage and doing a ton of damage, which is obviously totally fair. And I'll talk about that again in a minute here. With the live stream duel. But for the Spellslinger, it's a little bit different because their innate isn't like this long cooldown thing. It just actually lets them interact with their resource. So every one of the Spellslinger's abilities they don't really normally interact with the resource. You can just click the button and it'll do the thing normally, right? But if you use your innate, if you activate your Spell Surge, your spell power starts draining, and while the spell power is draining, all of your abilities, or I guess most of your abilities, all the assault and support power abilities, are enhanced in some way. So either larger damage, extra effects, maybe a faster casting time, whatever you want, and then you can turn it off afterwards. So you're sort of managing your resource with your innate ability. And actually, I think that is probably one of the more interesting mechanics, just because there's a lot of, like the base person is going to either, like if you take the most newbie of newbie people who don't even understand how the mechanic works, maybe they'll forget about it and they won't use it properly, their damage will be low, right? Go up one more step than that, they're going to push it on cooldown. Whenever they can push it, they're going to push it, use up all of it, they'll get a little bit of extra damage every now and then, and that'll be great, I guess, right? And then you get to the higher end, and those people are going to be the people who are going to actually use it when it's going to be really useful, right? So in PvP, maybe you're like sort of attacking the enemy, putting a little bit of light pressure, and then suddenly you do a target switch to the healer or whatever. You use your spell surge, all of a sudden your damage is really just high up there. So you have a lot of control over your burst. And then, like, let's say you get CC'd, or somebody on your team gets CC'd maybe, and you realize, okay, this burst isn't going to work out. You can cancel it and sort of save it for a little bit later and still sort of manage your burst cooldown. It's not just like, okay, you're screwed. Maybe that's what he meant by it's a little bit less punishing, that, okay, you didn't completely waste your cooldown, by doing that, but it's something that you're interacting with regularly. In a PvE sense, like I think a lot of people might think that, okay, this is going to be really uninteresting because people are going to just figure out what the highest damage abilities are, and they're always going to use Spell Surge only on those abilities, and they're just going to do it on cooldown every time, and that's going to be it. But for the Spellslinger, I think if you think about fight mechanics in WildStar, I don't think that you're going to see that many take and spank bosses that you're just sort of doing damage at, right? And so maybe in a very mobile boss fight where you need to be moving around a lot, you can use your Spell Surge to actually get off those stationary cast time ones by speeding up your cast. And so you want to actually save your Spell Surge for those moments and turn it off right afterwards so you're not wasting it on abilities that are actually normally mobile. Kind of thing. Or maybe you have a boss fight that has a bunch of ads that come out and you need to actually control those ads, so you use your Spell Surge only at that moment instead of just using it on cooldown. So I think that there's a lot of depth there with the Spellslinger mechanic that's probably not there for some of the other classes that just push their button and become immune for 8 seconds and get all their psi points, and I'm talking about the Esper. Now.
God damn, I just
Rant
lost
over.
I just lost like 5 hit points on that shit.
What about the fact that the odd thing that I kind of noticed here on the live stream was that the Spellslinger's pistols went from holding guns, and then he's like, you know what? Nope, I'm gonna holster them, and boom, holster. They're gone. They're not even on its sides. They're, beta's beta here, but it's kind of unlike every other class that we've seen. So it kind of sucks for Spellslingers if they're not going to have their guns on their person when they're holstered.
That did bother me because I played it a little bit at E3 and at PAX East or whatever, and that was the first thing I noticed. And the reason why I got spoiled on that was playing Star Wars: The Old Republic, because, to my knowledge, that was the first and only MMO I know where when you holstered your pistols, they actually showed up on your side. I remember playing SWG, and it was the exact same thing. If you had a pistol, when you put it away, it was gone, so you were just walking around like a civilian. The only character class I think that actually showed their weapon was like a rifleman or something to be on your back. But other than that, unless you were carrying it, it disappeared. So yes, it kind of sucks. I don't think that they're gonna bring it back for release. I don't know. I hope they do, but it just kind of doesn't look like they will. If they've gotten this far and we're gonna be getting this game in the springtime, I just can't imagine them, bringing it out. Maybe, they're clipping issues or what. But, the only reason why I'm just not raging is because other than Tor, every MMO that was sci-fi based was like that, right? So, Anarchy Online was like that. SWG was like that. What was the first MMO that came out? I can't even think of the name. Meridian, 59 was like that. So there's just been a lot of them where you don't actually see the pistol on the side. Tabula Rasa was like that. So I mean, most of the sci-fi MMOs genres are kind of like that, where you don't see your pistol on your side.
But why is that okay? That's part of the excitement is having your weapon at your side. Like having your sword on your back is like a great achievement of like, look at this awesome sword that I got. I don't have to just walk around swinging it around crazily in my hand. Like it's I can walk around town and still feel badass because it's on my back.
No, I completely agree with you. I'm not saying it's okay. I guess I'm just, I'm like the battered wife syndrome. I'm just used to it. You know what I mean? I'm just used to it. That's what I consider normal. Do I like it? No. Would I love to see my sidearms on my side? Sure. But I guess I'm just trying to say, like, I'm just used to it being that way. The Star Tour was a fluke. It was the only one that's ever done it. I liked it. Were there clipping issues depending on if you wore trench coats and stuff? Yeah, but I mean, it's just the way it is. Like, hopefully they'll fix it. Maybe that'll be a pre-launch or hopefully just a very soon after post-launch kind of fix.
I'm sure that they'll just have some sort of weird lore reason, like Spellslinger stores their weapons in the void, and
they pull them out
quicker for them to pull them out. I mean, I guess that technically is in the lore that's where they're getting their ammo, right? That was like on the class page that they were talking about. Spellslinger solved their ammo problem by just storing extra ammo in the void, and so now they have infinite ammo. Yay, no ammo mechanic. So yeah.
I mean, so if that's what they use as their little lore way of getting around it, then okay. I mean, as goofy as it is, I mean, with lore is a powerful thing. It's the one thing that everyone wants to ignore. Like, whatever lore, where's my PvP at? Where's PvP at? Okay, rating? Is rating here? Okay, rating's here. We're good. But, the point is if you've covered your bases with the lore, you just can't screw with that, Well, they pull them out of the void. Done. Block checked. Sorry, nerds.
Don't have much more to say. I wasted my spell surge of talking on that first bit.
Well, so you guys are talking about them storing stuff in the void. Now, another really kind of cool ability that they get is Void Slip, which you mentioned earlier, Farhan, and it's kind of a cool ability here. For about 7 seconds, if it's fully upgraded, although that 7 seconds is not locked in, but as of right now, for 7 seconds, the Spellslinger can enter another dimension, which has you seamlessly moving into another phase as an escape, popping out at any time that you want or until the spell ends. A lot of people would equate this to a vanish. It's a get out of fight free card. You're fighting me. I don't want to fight this battle. I'm gonna disappear and either run away or get the advantage on you.
I think it's a little bit more than a vanish, just because when they showed it off in the live stream, they were doing that boss fight, the second boss fight of Storm Talon, where he has all the tornadoes going back and forth and lightning striking and everything. And normally you'd have to run through that gauntlet and try to avoid all of these things, but he just slips into the void and runs straight, just beeline straight down the hallway without worrying about all the things. So
he just ignores the mechanics.
Well, I mean, it's a cooldown, right? He's using it as a way to just not have to walk around the telegraphs, and assuming cooldowns, other things. Yeah, maybe it seems like a little bit cheesy, but I mean, the idea is that, on the other hand, what if you're running through? You can't actually see what's actually in the normal world while you're in the void, right? Because you can only see other things that are in the void at the same time. So if you come out and you're in the middle of a tornado, then sorry, kind of thing, because you just need to know exactly where you are. Maybe your teammates have to warn you, oh, there's a tornado on the left, better be on the right when you come out, or something like that. I think there's a lot of interesting mechanics that you could do with the void, trying to get out.
So are you saying that if you go into the void and you're in the middle of a fight, you can change the position on where you come out of the void?
Well, so you go into the void, and then you're in a different phase, right? The whole world looks all sort of orangey, and sorry.
I was just saying it's an alternate reality. Everything the world is still in place. It's a different dimension. Lore-wise,
it's a different dimension. You're in.
No, I get that, but I'm talking about let's say that there's a fight, you're in a raid or whatever, and I guess I maybe didn't research this enough because I suck, but you're telling me that you could enter the void here at this coordinate, and you could come out in another coordinate.
Well, you'd have to walk there in the alternate dimension. So during the duration while you're in the void, you'd have to walk to the other place, and then you come out wherever you were when you ended the ability. Either the duration ends out, or you can push the button again and come out early. So one of the things that they said that you could do was that, let's say there's this big boss telegraph that's going to hit you. You could go into the void, avoid it, and then immediately pop out early. You don't have to wait the full whatever seconds, and just push the button again. You come out, and then you can keep doing your thing afterward.
That's awesome.
It is, isn't it? Spellslinger.
That's so awesome.
So what? As if this idea wasn't cool enough, especially because I said it kind of is the same as Vanish. It's to get out of a fight, but I think because of the idea of the alternate universe, it's not just you're not just going invisible. You're entering an alternate universe known as the Void. What's cool, I think, here is that other Spellslingers can follow you into the void and fight. So let's say you're trying to kill a Spellslinger, and you're like, oh, nope, screw this, I'm going into the void. And he's like, no, you don't, I'm gonna follow you. You're now in the same alternate phase together, and he can try and chase you down in the void, which I think really it keeps up with the lore and adds a new level of intricacy to it. I think that's awesome. It's an awesome way to give on them a cool ability, but not make it so game-breaking.
So this class is definitely cooler than all the other classes so far.
And this is why I was holding out for it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm partial to the warrior just because I'm I can see obvious tank in it, but damn, they don't have anything cool like that.
Yeah.
Not that I know about.
You have a nuclear powered sword, so you have that going for you. But
yeah, but you have a gun.
It would take 2 guns.
Yeah, take a sword to a gunfight. I mean, come on.
Now, they actually also hinted at the possibility of void creatures in sensitive areas, which I think could be interesting. So let's say that almost could add a whole nother complexity to the whole raid encounter situation. Like if you go into the void and there's stuff that you have to, you know, walk through, or for example, let's say we're in a corridor and we're like, you know what, hey, we're just gonna pass over these monsters and skip this fight or skip this trash or whatever the case may be by going into the void. You could potentially just end up going into the void and there's void creatures that are blocking your way, avoiding your really easily kind of pass through the encounter kind of situation, which I think could, again, like I said, it could add another layer of complexity. It's not like you're just exiting the fight. You're taking a gamble. Do you deal with, as Farani were saying, do I stay in the telegraph or do I shift into the void and now have to deal with what's on the other side until I'm in a safe place where I can come out of the void?
Chat room had a question on Grimes for Life asking, can non-Spellslingers follow you in? As far as we know right now, I don't think that there is an ability that does that. Maybe that would be like some sort of like an amp ability that would let you bring a few people into the void with you. That would be sort of cool, but we don't know anything about that.
Can't the Spellslinger be a healer?
It can, yeah.
So imagine if you have a healer Spellslinger, the tank's all screwed up, and you basically grab the tank right before some crushing blow comes down, you know, from the raid boss. You grab his ass, you go into the void, you move over, whatever, and maybe potentially he heals the tank if he can during that 7 seconds while he's in the void.
That sounds like a great... Let's take the tank out of the fight for 7 seconds and hope that the raid doesn't
Well, you
die.
can end it early, right? You can end it early.
Well, normally you have the off
Or you
tank.
just leave him there. Whoops. Sorry. Where'd he go?
Okay, but kidding aside, but I mean, think about it. I mean, normally in a raid you have an off tank, right? So if you're doing a Romeo and Juliet fight or you're doing off tanking where you pass aggro, right? If you know your main tank's getting ready to get his butt kicked because he brain farted, he popped a cooldown too soon, the healer sucked something, that's an opportunity to, you know, like I was saying a couple of shows ago, where you can come back, right, from the brink of destruction, take that main tank out, have the off tank taunt, take the boss aggro, hold the boss for 7 seconds. Unless you totally suck ass, your off tank should be able to hold a boss for 7 seconds. That gives you a chance to get your main tank well, pull him back in from the void. Healers could heal him, and then he could sit there and taunt and pull it back. I mean, imagine how epic that would be.
Again, we don't know that there is an ability that lets someone else go into the void. But
we're really going down a tangent now.
I'm totally in this cosmic bunny hole that you guys have pulled me in. But like, I mean, I thought the Spellslinger was cool, but I was like, I hadn't really been thinking about it like this. So I'm like, man, this Spellslinger is really cool. Might have to roll one or two.
I do wonder what would happen threat-wise. Like, could you do something where, maybe not the whole like bringing somebody else into the void kind of thing, but maybe like you're in a raid or something, you void slip past a pack of mobs or something like that. Okay, if you can't bring your whole raid with you, that's one thing, but maybe you can pull something, then void slip past another group and sort of skip some mobs that way by, sort of not being in the void and sort of pulling around them or whatever. That sort of depends on how social aggro works and other things like that, but exploits.
So basically what we're saying is everything we just talked about might not even happen.
Yeah, I mean, we're theory crafting. We all have our theory crafting helmets on, but like, what is it, Serene or Serine, however you pronounce your name? I think you're the one saying, why would you use the void if you were going to put him into the void? Why would you taunt if you're going to use the void? Because the point is if that main tank is not there and he's in the void, then there's nothing to control who the boss is going to go after. Especially if you have DPS crushing them, that DPS is going to immediately go right to the top of the aggro table, so the boss is going to turn around and smack the crap out of the DPSer. So that's the reason why as soon as your main tank leaves, your off tank needs to taunt. That's the whole reason why the tank and the main tank and the off tank have to have good communication, because if he's not there, you need to try to make sure you go back to the top of the aggro table.
If we could even, we don't even know. That's
if
the
you
thing.
can do that,
we don't even know if
we're completely
we have
theory
the ability
crafting.
to
I'm talking about something that would be an amazing raid encounter. I'm talking about something that would be an awesome feature that could be. doesn't mean it will be there, right?
Now, just maybe
Because as a tank,
encouraging this tangent a little bit here, but do you think that like they might actually do something where a raid would require to have a certain number of Spellslingers go into the void and do something? Because you have 40 people, right? So they can do that, can't they? They can say, like, you're going to have a few Spellslingers, have them go do something while they're in the void.
Yeah, I mean, so hold on. He's saying, no, the point is why use the void when you can taunt. It's just something else, because a lot of times the main tank might get hit and killed. So you use the void. I'm theory crafting. I got my theory crafting helmet, but to answer your question, the reason why I'm saying use the void is because you can stop the main tank or the tank from getting killed, right? That way you pull him out, the off tank taunts, takes the aggro, holds it, and then you heal the tank, because otherwise I'm talking about a scenario where your main tank's just going to go down. And they're already talking about not letting you have in-game or in-combat res, right? So something like that would be a chance to take that guy out of the fight so he does not die, let the off-tank get the aggro, heal him up, and then put him back in the fight. That's the reason why.
Let's get back onto a subject here that
Track
actually
of any sort.
might, just something here. Because another feature I think that a lot of people were actually glad that it was confirmed. This feature will actually be there. Free dual specking here. So, with kind of possibly more than 2 specs later on, this has got to be happy to hear. You got to be happy that it's going to be free to dual spec.
Yep. What they said was, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm doing this from memory. I didn't review this part, but I think that it's at level 20, they're saying that they'll give you a second spec that you could do, which aligns very conveniently with the first dungeon. Hey, I wonder why. But, so then you get the ability then to have a separate set of a separate set of ability tiers that are saved. I mean, of course, you can always change out your ability tiers and which abilities you have in your bar at any time, but at least especially the amp part, which seemed like sort of a damper if you had to pay every time you wanted to switch from PvE to PvP or tanking to DPS or DPS to heals or whatever kind of combination you want. Now you'll have that ability and potentially ways later on to earn them. I think that would be like a really compelling place to put something for the Elder Gem progression that they talked about, where an Elder game, where they said before that in the Elder game you're going to be earning this currency either by helping, mentoring down kind of thing, or doing whatever other kind of group activities. You'll be able to earn this sort of currency for progression, and that would be a cool perk. Like, so you can, if that's something that you're doing, maybe you want to spend some of your Elder points or whatever it's called, gems, on an extra dual spec, I guess triple spec, or whatever you want to call it, an extra specialization for your loadout, and could be a little more flexible. I think that'd be a really cool way to, word that out without it getting too crazy out of control.
Well, I like just the fact that they were saying that anytime you can maneuver, and I don't even know what level they were talking, outside of the 20, maybe 20 is the governor, as long as you're not in combat, you can change your spec, right?
You can change your abilities on your bar and the tiering. You can't change the amps.
Okay, correct. But I guess, depending on how you spec out your amps, which that might ultimately be what makes you a spec, right?
Yeah.
You could probably have, I would argue, I'm assuming, I got my theory crafting helmet on, that you could probably have some kind of generic, to some degree, amp loadout, right? In which case, you can flip back and forth your abilities for your bar, which would essentially make you, are you healer spec, are you tank spec, or are you DPS spec, or what have you, within reason, right? Obviously, there's going to be a min-maxed, you are a perfect healer, you are a perfect DPS, but you could probably make yourself a hybrid that's enough to get by to do the non-raid instance zones, right? Something like that, where you can just, we don't have a healer, Troy didn't log on tonight, that ass. All right, I'll go with, this little spec or whatever, this loadout, and that's enough to tank, or that's enough to DPS. You know what I mean? Especially if you probably have a bunch of stalkers who got the DPS build or something like that when they might be the tank. That might be enough to get you through. Which,
Yep.
considering most games don't come with your dual spec or anything close to this at launch, right? It's normally a post-launch kind of scenario.
Again, though, I do want to sort of head off the whole sort of panic that sort of comes up with the idea of having the really easy flexibility with changing your spec. You still would need to earn the gear to actually pull that off, right? You can't just put on a bunch of tanking abilities and expect to do really well unless you have tank gear or heal gear for, your healing. So, yeah, you'll still have to be able to earn your way towards being able to pull off those rolls. It's not just about, okay, I push the button, respec, and now I am the other role without any, effort into it. So.
Let's move on, but before we do, I want to tell you guys about a sponsor that we have here at Gamebreaker, one of the greatest sponsors that anyone in the creative industry could get their hands on. I'm talking about Shutterstock.com. If you guys out there create videos or have YouTube channels, create websites, if you are at all a part of the creative industry, I have to recommend Shutterstock.com to you. It's got such great assets that you can use. Over 20 million stock photos, illustrations, vectors, video clips, just a whole bunch of stuff that you'd never, ever think about necessarily having the skills to make yourself. So, for example, wow, weird, 16 by 9. Crazy HD wide scope here. But as I was saying here, there's some really awesome things that they have for you to use, like this kind of flying through space animation that could potentially be, be used for a guild kind of name, or there's just so much potential here. And I can tell you, as someone who's dabbled with creative effects and visual effects for, this one has a whole bunch of flaming embers, and that takes a really strong plugin in order to create that yourself with all these flashing lights. And Shutterstock is just a great way to get your hands on some really high quality visual effects like this and be able to use them in, in your very own projects. They've got visual, motion graphics like I'm showing you right now. They've also got a whole bunch of stock photography. And if you go and create a free account, you don't even have to sign up or put a credit card down. You can actually create your own little, they're called light boxes. However, their feature is not actually available right here. So, but basically you can come here and check out awesome photography, stock photos right here. For those of you guys who watch another show on our network, XIV Reborn, this graphic has got to look familiar to some of you guys as we use it on our main title splash screen. So just a lot of great images that you can actually use, and great search tools as well. I know a lot of people out there like myself. Some people have. When I was young, I wanted to start a film company. Call it Red Leaf Pictures. That was going to be my film company name. And so what Shutterstock actually has is they've got this awesome tool called Spectrum, which lets you kind of define, a name of an image that you're looking for. Let's say we're looking for a leaf, red leaf. We get a whole bunch of green leaf images, but if I just grab this slider here, I can slide it right over to red, and it's going to give me a nice spectrum of colors in that area based on my search word. And I can basically try and come down here and see if there's any images that kind of match what I'm looking for. So just a great way if you're kind of restricted by a certain color palette, you need an image of a certain color. Spectrum's a great tool to use. And if you guys head on over to Shutterstock and you find something that you want to purchase, use the offer code Gamebreaker1113, because if you use that offer code, you get 25% off your new account. So head on over, check out Shutterstock, help support Gamebreaker by supporting our sponsors, and we hope that we can continue to grow with you. So check out Shutterstock. All right, moving on here. I want to move on because we kind of talked about the Esper class last week, and now, obviously, as we've talked about the Spellslinger, so there's obviously going to be a lot of people who draw comparisons between the two. The low armor, ranged casters, mages, sorcerers, wizards, whatever you want to kind of call them. Melee options aside here, of their spells, Carbine has actually put together a really kind of awesome comparison of the ranges of both classes, and you can kind of really see the difference between the two. So, here is just a quick look at kind of the spell range of the telegraphs of what your spells, front conals, as you can tell here, a big front conal that'll go about 25 meters. a short melee range conal, a big AoE area, this large AoE that you can tell here that goes up to 35 yards. Kind of a very broad range caster. But as we spoke about, you guys were speaking about skill shots and how you could miss your gunshots. If we look over here at the Spellslinger, these are pretty much line attacks. A couple conal attacks, but a very narrow range cone. For the most part, the Spellslinger is going to have very long range, up to 40 meters worth in a very thin line. And, God, I hope landing those skill shots has some sort of satisfying effect, because you are going to have to be on point if this is your attack range kind of, telegraph system. You better get some damn good benefits for hitting your 40-meter, skill shot.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that, and it did raise a little bit of a concern for me when I first saw, like, these little comparison sheets, because, when you take into account travel time of projectiles and things like that, then it sort of becomes concerning when you have such a narrow, like, line that you're trying to shoot down, kind of thing. And they sort of talked about this a little bit on the live stream, where basically, they're managing it by saying that certain abilities might have like an instant effect. Some of them will have an actual cast out, because this is something that might not be completely clear if you're just looking at the red or blue squares on the ground, or cones, whatever shape the telegraph happens to be. That if it's a projectile, it still has to actually, like, that fireball or whatever has to actually hit the enemy. It's not just about, okay, I had my column on them and I pushed the button and it definitely hit them, kind of thing right there. Because some abilities, they're still going to have a projectile. So if they see a fireball flying at them, cone on the ground or not, if they get out before the fireball actually hits them, then they're not going to actually get hit by it.
Do you think that we'll see additional effects, like I kind of made reference here to this 40 meter ranged whatever spell this is? Do you think that they'll create additional effects if you can hit it at the 40 meter mark? Like maybe increase damage the more distance it travels?
It's definitely possible that they could have something like that. They did say that some abilities, so like this was another question that came up, like, will all abilities just like hit everything in the line, or will it hit the first thing that it hits, or something? And that's on a case-by-case basis, depending on the ability. I think specifically that they mentioned for the 40-meter one, that is like a assassinate ability that the Spellslinger has, which was like on their amp. And so it's like a very focused, like, kill them when they're really low on health kind of ability. And if you use it, then it's going to hit the first target. So if there's something else in the way, then you sort of have to like thread the needle, trying to get it through all the cruft of everyone else that's in the way to actually hit that target if they're somewhat far away. And, that definitely raises the skill shot part of it, right? That you can't just line up the rectangle on the ground. You also have to worry about it, where things are moving, travel time, projectile speed, all those different kinds of things.
Well,
and I think that is
if you got good teammates, they'll run interference and take the hit for it if they've got the health for it.
Definitely, they'll do that. They'll also do things like just pull you away from them, or CC one player or something like that. So maybe your team will help you land that assassinate by CCing them, rooting them, whatever, so that you can actually land that shot. And that's definitely going to be part of like higher level play, trying to get those kinds of control on your opponent so you can land those really hard to hit shots. And then obviously, if something is a harder to land shot, like so, we saw with the Spellslinger versus the Esper. If you have like a really narrow range, if it's harder to land those hits, then they should reasonably do a little bit more damage than the ones that are going to very consistently hit overall. So that in the end, like over a long fight, maybe you'll have about average damage, accounting for the fact that maybe you miss some percentage of your shots. But, if you're really good, then maybe you can make up for that. So maybe the skill cap on the Spellslinger might end up being a little bit higher than on the Esper. Again, hating on the Esper. That is my role.
I mean, but there's also another way of looking at it too. In terms of leveling, people are saying, well, your cone effect or whatever is much slimmer if you're the Spellslinger. That's also potentially an advantage when leveling. So, for example, if you have a bunch of mobs that are kind of in the same area, you hit everything in your cone, right? So I had that happen to me a bunch when I was playing at E3. I was trying to shoot this one guy and ended up shooting like these other two that were in the bush that I wasn't paying attention to. So now I've got 3 mobs on me. So, having that more narrow beam is an advantage. Again, I guess maybe to hate on the Esper, but it is an advantage because now, that one guy I want to shoot, and you can see your telegraph on the ground. I now can guarantee that he's the only one I'm going to be hitting and not aggroing all these folks I don't want, right? So it from a PvE leveling standpoint, it's going to be a lot easier. From a PvP standpoint, yeah, if they get all on your grill, then yeah, you're probably going to want more cone to hit more folks, right? So it's a trade-off, right?
Do you think that the attack range combination like this makes a lot of sense? Obviously, we talked about the mobility that the Spellslinger is going to have and how much of an advantage that's going to play in PvP, but having that kind of mobility has to come with a downfall somewhere, and an entirely skill shot based class like this is definitely, I think, a good trade-off for the high mobility that they're going to be giving you.
I do want to mention though that again, with the whole idea of trade-offs, what they said is that the longer range abilities on this chart, so like the one that's sort of going to 35 meters and the one that's going to 40 meters, those are going to be abilities that you have to be stationary when you're casting. So, I know that I was hating a lot on the Esper, like for having the sort of stationary builder that maybe with the telekinetic swords that you're throwing out. But, Spellslinger does have some abilities that you're going to have to hold still to do. The charge shot being the one that we've seen the most probably through these videos, being a ability that they charge up and then they do damage over a pretty long range. But, again, even though it's a long range, if the Spellslinger, if you build completely mobile, you're not going to have all those really, really long range attacks because that's the trade-off that you're giving. If you want to have a really, really mobile Spellslinger without any stationary casted abilities, then you're not going to have that super long range that another Spellslinger might have. So, so you have trade-offs. You have to sort of decide what you want to do.
All right, let's move on. We still got a lot to talk about here. We got raids to get to and even a potential beta date, and we are already running close to our time. So let's just move on here. 20-man or 40-man? Which do you guys prefer? I don't know. But I know that Carbine doesn't care because in WildStar, if you plan on being the best of the best in 40-man, it's going to take you some time before you even get started. Because first you got to get to max level, of course. Well, level 1 raids, that was going to happen.
They do have like world bosses while you're leveling up. I just want to throw that in there. Like a level, like I think Metal Mob, that's the one that they've shown off the most. It's like a level 9 20-man raid boss in like the first non-starter zone. So.
So you got to get to max level. You're going to have to get to max level if you're going to be a 40-man raider. It's the very first thing you're going to have to do. Then you're going to have to gear up in dungeons and adventures. And really, there's kind of no skipping to the veteran versions of the dungeons or adventures. And they come next. After that, let the 40-man raiding begin, right? You got 40 people. You all hit max level. You're ready to go. 40-man raiding, right? Nope. You've got to gear up in the 20-man versions first. Only then will you be able to jump into the 40-man rating. So, real quick, is this hard? Like, is this hard lock gating? Is this a matter of like the 20-man version you just won't be able to overcome the 40-man version, or is this old school kind of Burning Crusade? Like, you've got to be able to clear Karazhan before you can go unlock Serpentstrime Cavern, or is it that kind of gating, or is it gear gating?
It's a lot closer to like the Burning Crusade example, specifically because I mean, like we keep saying like 20-man version. It's not a version thing. There's a separate 20-man raid from the 40-man raid. It's not like I pushed a UI button and now my raid is 40-man versus 20-man or something like that. And it's the exact same bosses, just with different mechanics or slightly higher scaling on the damage and healing or whatever. It's a different raid entirely, so it is a lot more close to that Burning Crusade Karazhan being a smaller raid, and then you sort of move up to the larger raid that you know, so like, I don't know the name of the 20-man raid in WildStar yet. I don't think that they reveal that, but whatever that is, and then you go to Datascape and the 40-man raid in the computer or whatever.
How do you guys feel about this? Because World of Warcraft kind of came out and made a statement that they stepped away from it because it sucked being that group on Tempest Keep and then you'd lose like 5 people, and then you'd recruit, and then you'd have to go back to SSC, and then get them gear, and then also get them the key. Like, that's why they claimed to go away from it, because of it's a hardcore progression curve, and I get it. WildStar's trying to be a hardcore type of game. I'm not hating on the system, but I just know that's why WoW started to move away from it. So how do you guys feel about that issue?
I think that it's smart by them making it 2 separate raids or separate levels of stuff to do, because at the end of the day, people want to feel like they've accomplished something. And I would argue that, you know, the 40-man raids of WoW or whatever, yeah, they were challenging because they probably put more stuff in it, but I would argue that it's probably the administrative headache of trying to organize 40 people versus trying to organize 20 people. So the sweet spot seems to be around 20, 24-ish as the number. So that's where probably 95% of the groups that raid, guilds, pugs, whatever, that's probably where the majority of the people are going to be, and they're going to be happy with that, check their block and call it a day and go on with their lives. I mean, the folks that are going to do the 40-mans are going to be the really elite or the really hardcore or the really just dedicated, right, raid teams that just do it and get that gear. I would argue you're not going to see very many pugs accomplish this feat, and that's okay. I mean, it's going to be really for the people who just want the bragging rights. It's going to be for the folks who are going to organize, and so by making it, you know, a separate raid with its own things to go after, the great thing is that they're forcing you to raid up first through the 20-mans. They're forcing you to actually get all of your stuff, your house in order. Why? Couple reasons. One, it is a barrier to entry, right? The people who want to be elite should feel elite. They should have something that separates them from everybody else. Contrary to the political correctness of society, and you can argue it depending on which side of the aisle you're on, you know, there are going to be people who are going to win, and there are going to be people who are going to lose. And if everyone gets a trophy at the end of the year because they just tried real hard,
But Mark,
well, then all that does is it discredits the winners. You see?
How do you feel though? Because I hear what you're saying, but how would you feel if you were number one? You were one of the winners, and then 5 people drop out of your guild. Now you're not running the guild. You're just in the guild. We'll say you're number one. You're ready to go. 5 people drop out. You now have to recruit, and your guild leader says, "Sorry guys, we have to stop pushing to be number 1. We've got to go back and be number 10 while we get these people caught up, so that we can keep pushing to be number 1." Aren't you more likely just to be like, "Well, fuck this. I'll go find a guild that's number 2 and join them"?
No, it's easy to overcome, because I'll just go to the Gamebreaker Nation Circle, which is the superior alliance that's going to be in the game, and I'll grab 5 people and I'll build it. Or I'll look at the alliances that I've built. You know, Guild Umbra, Mog Nation, Subterfuge Gaming. We are Alliance X. We are an alliance that's already pre-built for this. We're going to have alliance level raids. We're going to have alliance level 40-mans. You know, so the point is if you are, you know, monolithic and you're only thinking within your bubble, yes, you will be screwed. You will fall prey to that. But if you are used to being in experienced guilds where you have churn, I had a guy today who's been with us for, you know, a while, who I was looking at for some senior leadership, quit my guild today. He just told me about it today. Guess what? Shit happens. People leave. People move on. You can't let one man stop a mission. It's the one thing you learn in the military. You cannot be or have a single point of failure or 5 points of failure. So have a plan. Have an alliance. Use Gamebreaker Nation. Use a circle. Find avenues so that as you're progressing, you can have an answer. Now, if you get caught slipping, then guess what you got to do? You got to take your grown-up pill, and you got to regroup. You know, if you were in a guild that's so small that losing 5 people stunts your ability to do something, well, then you're in a very small guild and you need an alliance. You need to go to the Gamebreaker Nation circle. But if that's just where you find yourself, then you got to sit there and get to recruiting. Get 5 more people, gear them up, and then go back and do it. You know, but I'm just trying to say, it doesn't have to be that way. It does not have to be the end of the world. You know, as much as I would love to say that, you know, Guild Umbra, we're going to have a 40-man, you know, raid group day one. I mean, yes, I have a roster, but are every single one of those people going to be in the same time zone, ready to compete and be the best athlete for that day? Hopefully, but the chances are probably not. So my plan is to have our alliance, and maybe we'll bring 20 people or 25 or 30 or 10 or 15 or something, and we'll sit there and we'll work as an alliance, and it'll be a way that we can overcome. That is my plan. That's what I would implore everybody to do. If you can't do it, then your only alternative is to either dwindle and die or to regroup. That is it. That's what you're going to do.
You know, it's definitely not going to be easy. That's going to be like the biggest thing. Just like it is a concerted effort. You have to actually take the effort. You have to go through that process. If you're going to be that large of a guild that you have, or a raid group, whatever, you can't just rely on exactly 40 people to come every single night. Like, that's just not viable. And this is, you know, like, it wasn't as hardcore for me when I was doing vanilla WoW raiding 40-man. Like, we weren't like server first or whatever, but we still, you know, had like a bench. So we had extra people who could come, who other people couldn't come, so that if somebody had something come up, then you could sort of sub in some people or whatever you needed to do. We had people who were on waitlist or something like that. And you're continuously recruiting throughout the process. You don't wait till this person leaves before you start recruiting the new person. Now, you know, everything that Mark said and what I just said together, like, that's not easy, right? That's really hard. Not that many guilds are going to be able to pull it off. Not that many people are going to be able to pull it off. Carbine's saying that they're all right with that. And, you know, it sort of remains to be seen exactly how many people are going to be able to pull that off, how many people are going to be able to do it. Hopefully 20-man raiding actually is something that is viable enough, if it's fun enough, that like enough people can sort of get their fill and sort of feel good about it. You know, Carbine's approach has sort of been, yeah, it's going to be really tough to do 40-man raiding. Yeah, it's going to be hard to actually get to that point where you're actually doing it. It's going to be a lot of work, a lot of logistics, all that kind of stuff. If you're hardcore enough to do it, but we have all this other content for you if you can't. We have solo content. We have small group content. And I think they have to live up to that. If they don't, then this is a huge blunder. This is going to be a big problem. But if they can actually pull that off, if they can have all that other content to make people satisfied who aren't going to do the 40-man raiding, who aren't going to do all that stuff, then I think it's all right that, okay, maybe only a few people are interacting with it. And this is like an endless debate of, like, should the developer put in the resources for something that such a small percentage of people do? Carbine's saying yes, it's worth it just for the mystique, the prestige that comes along with having that. Gives people a thing to look forward to. It gives people something to feel good about in the game. It makes it a whole community. There's a lot of components there that aren't just about pure gameplay, right? So, I mean, Carbine sort of made the decision about it, but the thing that they have to do is follow up with all the other content and make it actually compelling and make it something that's fun that people actually can do, so that they stay in the game. They don't end up leaving because they have nothing to do.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, what is it that the people who do and accomplish the 40-man raids, what's the difference in their game experience than everybody else? Okay, they might have one set of gear, and I guarantee you the stats on that gear is not going to be so much better than the stats on the 20-man gear that it's going to make a fundamental difference. And then it's only going to be PvE gear at that. So what are they doing other than the raid that's going to even really affect anything? Because I guarantee you, if you got the 20-man raid and that's all you can do, and that's all that you care to do, any world boss, if you're all level 50 and you get your guild, you're going to smoke them, right? So
that is one thing that I wanted to bring up, though. I'm going to skip a little bit forward in where we are in the notes and just say that. So what they said is that each tier of content would be 12% upgrade over the last tier, and that's like a multiplicative thing. You have sort of an exponential growth with item level. You know, like if you want more details on that, see my little article that I made way back with the itemization or whatever. Multiplicative, yeah. Anyway, so what you got there is that you got this 12% growth per tier, and also 20-man to 40-man. Now, my concern is sort of threefold. First of all, is that enough of a gap to actually make the 40-man people deal with all the logistics, all the headache, and everything else that comes with going from 20-man to 40-man? Because that's tough. And I will say that, you know, compared to Burning Crusade, I think at least the numbers add up better. You know, 10 plus 10 is not 25. Blizzard, I don't know what was up with that, but at least 20 plus 20 makes 40. Not great, but still at least it's a little bit better. But that aside, like, you've got that gap. Is that 12% enough of a gap? We'll have to see. Second of all, how does that work when you actually go from one tier of content to the next tier of content? And I know that Gortuck sort of said that tiers is maybe not the best term. They're sort of trying to shoehorn their rating thing into current terminology. So who knows how tiers will work when they release the next set of raids or whatever. How does the next 20-man compare? Is the next 20-man equivalent to the current 40 or to the current 40-man, or is it higher? Or how does that work? That's a whole other ballgame. And then thirdly, how does this affect PvP? Do we have like the whole tiers of gear with battlegrounds to arenas to war plots or something like that? Because a 12% gap at that point actually sounds huge. So
I think the warplot gear is probably going to be analogous or equal to the 40-man raid gear, right?
I mean, in theory, it would be from a itemization standpoint, but then does that mean arenas is the equivalent of 20-man, and then battlegrounds is arena equivalent of veteran dungeons? I
would think so, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because you have PvP gear for PvP and PvE gear for PvE. I mean, unless you're complete morons, you're not going to have PvE gear that's going to trump PvP gear.
No, I'm not saying PvE compared to PvP. I'm just talking PvP progression. Are they going to mirror it with the same kind of 12% upgrade? Because I think a lot of people will have a problem with arena gear being 12.5% less than warplot gear. You know what I mean? So, I mean, maybe they could do something completely separate. Maybe it's only like one item level up, which is 4%.
Maybe that's a good reason you need to start warplotting. Maybe you just need to warplot.
So let's think long term here. Let's think content releases. They could release a 20-man version and then bring the 40-man version later, couldn't they? Or do they have to release a 20 and 40 at the same time? Again,
it's not a versioning thing. It is separate raids. So yeah, they could. I mean, this is sort of like a thing that I think XIV is sort of going through right now. I'm not super up to date with XIV, so maybe Mark or chat room can fill me in if you know about it. But I know that they have like this issue where they have like the larger raids and the smaller raids, and then they're coming out and which one gives better gear. Like they're coming out with a small raid now or something that has worse gear than the current big raid, and so people don't really have the motivation to go back to the new raid because it gives less gear. And I mean, it makes sense from some standpoint that, okay, it's a smaller raid, so it shouldn't give as good gear as the big raid, but then where's the motivation to actually go there if you've already done the big raid? I think WildStar might actually end up in the similar point. I think a good way of approaching it would be to have a 20-man and a 40-man each time that they add new raid content. Whether or not they'll be able to actually pull that off is completely up in the air. We have no idea what their rollout plan is for other raids. We just know that there's going to be a 20-man, there's going to be a 40-man at launch. Afterward, we don't know yet. So, what do you think?
All right, viewers, let us know what you guys think in the comments below. It's a crazy conversation that's just gonna go on, and we've got to move on because we still have to get to open beta release dates. But let us know what you guys are thinking in the comments below. Next up, before I move on, though, I want to tell you guys about another sponsor that we have here right at Gamebreaker. Now, I don't know if you guys went and saw Hunger Games over the weekend. I have neglected to do so as well, but I know for a fact Catching Fire is a great book, movie, story because of Audible.com. Audible.com is a must-have service for anybody who loves great stories, but maybe you just don't find that you have the time to read books like you used to anymore, or maybe you got a long commute to work. Me, I sit on average in the car 30 minutes to drive 7 miles. So what do? I listen to audiobooks. That's how I pass the time. And Catching Fire got rave reviews over the weekend. It's just everybody is loving Catching Fire at the moment, and you can actually catch all of Catching Fire. You can get the full story because this book alone is almost 12 hours. I promise what you experienced in the movie this weekend was nowhere near the full story. So do yourself a favor and check out Catching Fire on Audible, and you could maybe get yourself the full story of the Hunger Games. And let's say you just want to know more. Let's say you don't want to wait till next Christmas to see Mockingjay. Well, Mockingjay is also available right now on Audible.com, and you can pick that one up as well for another wonderful 12-hour storytelling session. So go away. I don't have any questions. I'm here to tell the answers, and the answers are that everybody should check out Audible.com. And you guys, if you want to go check out either one of these books or one of the many other amazing books that they have. And like they not only have, they've got Revolt, they've got Twilight. If you guys are still about the Twilight thing, I'm not sure if Twilight fans are still the minority anymore. But they've got video game related topics. They have just anything you can think of. I know, we talked a little bit about World of Warcraft. They've got World of Warcraft books. They've got Diablo books. They've got Elder Scrolls books. It's not just, your run-of-the-mill audiobooks. I guarantee you, if you look through Audible selection, they'll have something that you will find. And if you guys head on over to audible.com/Gamebreaker, we'll hook you up with the free 30-day trial of the service, as well as give you a free audiobook. So that one book that you find that you love, which you'll be able to find tons of, you can get one of them free and try out the service and decide if you want to stay a member or not. So check it out, audible.com/Gamebreaker. All right, here we go. Open beta. What everybody has been waiting for. Officially confirmed. We're about to tell you the date right now. So get your pens and papers out. Are you ready? Are you prepared? You should expect the open beta around a month before we launch.
What?
I hope
it's a relative date.
Doesn't matter, still a date. We still win. We still told you when open beta is gonna be. A month before launch. Okay, so what do you guys expect here? That's pretty normal. Is that it? Do you guys think that'll be an early start kind of launch? Or will that just be an open beta, hey, everybody come play our game a month before we actually launch, and then you got to start all over again?
Well, a month is definitely a long time if it's like a start kind of thing, right? So
yeah, I mean, they're just going to be stress testing the heck out of it, finding what breaks, figuring out server optimization to figure out how many people they can probably get on the server before it falls on its side, right? I mean, all the testing is going to be done before then. They're just trying to figure out, can they handle the load in their data center? Do they have a distributed architecture that's going to allow everybody to get on, are they going to have a queue system? Are they going to have some kind of offload server? That's when they're going to figure out all that. Other than that, I mean, I think that it's going to be debatable relative, and, we have so many shows between now and then to talk about, are they going to have the collector's edition and the digital download and this and that and the deluxe edition? And, I think that relative to those, you're probably going to get a head start of like a few days at a uplift in cost, right? But I can't imagine it being anything more than like 2 or 3 days, which tends to be the norm right now, right? That's what I see.
Yeah, I'd expect if they do intend for it to be a full month before the launch, it would be like maybe a week or so of like an open beta stress test kind of thing, where they're just sort of making sure that everything's working, let people sort of get a taste for it, and then they close it, have a little bit of time to fix whatever problems that might have come up, get their big boy shoes on, and get going in there, and then have an early access kind of thing after that at some point. Right before launch. So yeah, I would not expect like the full month of open beta.
Yeah,
so, I mean, you guys thinking more just like a beta weekend approach to kind of tease, because a month could really burn someone out. I think maybe just a beta weekend, kind of get a taste, get excited.
Maybe it'd be a weekend. I'm personally biased way against beta weekends because I hate them, because they make me like give up like an entire weekend for something that doesn't actually matter in progression.
And then they a weekend, then they delete all your stuff. Then a weekend, then they delete all your stuff.
I hate it.
I'm like, and I tell game companies this all the time. There's one game company that's got a big game coming out now. I'm like, you're not doing yourself any favors with this. And they're like, well, we have game company, on our paycheck, so we know better than you. I'm like, all right, well, I got consumer on my paycheck, and trust me on this one, son.
But yeah, it's not going to be like a continuous flow of a long amount of thing. I'm hoping for like a week, like maybe 2 weeks, or like a week of access, then like maybe 2 weeks of non-access, getting everything ready, and then early access, and then launch kind of thing.
How much early access do you want?
Me, personally? I actually like as little as possible. I know that is like sort of insane, but I would prefer for everything to just sort of be a little bit more compact. I know that because like WildStar's already sort of doing the thing where like, the first 2 zones are like starter zone kind of things are instance, so that you have like a really small cap on them. So hopefully that helps enough with sort of spreading people out and letting things go. Because they've said so. I'm legit in saying that. So they've said that, you know, those things are capped. But after that,
I want at least 2 days early.
2 days? 2 days was fine. 2 days was fine. I just don't like a week. A week early just makes it seem like now I'm level 20 and everyone else, all like my friends who aren't pre-ordering for whatever reason aren't. And I feel bad. Although they have mentoring. Hey, mentoring.
Farhan Siddiqui, you can follow him right down there at Unindel. Be sure to catch him each and every week right here on UDSP. Thank you so much for your insight each week, Farhan. We really appreciate it. Mark Taylor, you can follow him right down there at Guild Umbra. You can catch him here each and every week as well on UDSP. Be sure to follow him down there at Guild Umbra. Me, you guys can follow me right down here at Mike Schaffnitz. You cannot catch me here each and every week, although occasionally I like to pop my head in and say hello. Thank you guys so much for watching. What's that?
We'd love to have you.
All right, it's always fun to come back. If you guys have not checked out Gamebreaker TV's website for all of your MMO-related news, a bunch of stuff goes up there each and every day, so be sure to check out Gamebreaker.tv, as well as follow us on Twitter, Gamebreaker TV, and check out all of the other networks that we have. If WildStar isn't your thing, I'm not sure why you're watching the show. We appreciate it. But if you know another MMO suits your fancy, we'll probably talk about that as well. So we've got a show for everyone there on Gamebreaker TV. Be sure to go check us out. Thank you guys, every single one of you, for watching. We appreciate it. We'll see you next week.